Summer 1941, the German Blitzkrieg was unstoppable. City after city fell before Hitler's armies. But as the panzers raced across the Soviet Union, one city stood in their path: Kiev. A city of ancient walls and deep history, sitting on the banks of the Dnieper River. For Hitler, Kiev was an opportunity. For Stalin, it was a symbol, one that could not fall. What followed was not just a battle, but the largest encirclement in the history of warfare. A victory so great, it blinded Hitler to his greatest mistake. By mid-August 1941, the German army had advanced more than 500 miles into Soviet territory. Army Group Center had captured Smolensk and was preparing to strike for Moscow. For the generals, the road to victory was clear: push east, capture Moscow, and end the war before winter. But in Hitler's headquarters, the Wolf's Lair, a new argument erupted. Hitler wanted the South. Ukraine, with its rich farmland, coal, and oil, was the true prize, he said. His generals disagreed. Field Marshal von Bock and Guderian begged to drive straight for Moscow. Every day of delay, they warned, meant fighting the Russian winter. Voice actor as Guderian, the road to Kiev is the road to nowhere. The road to Moscow is the road to victory. Narrator: Hitler ignored them. He ordered the panzers of Army Group Center to turn south, toward Kiev. It was a decision that would change the war. In Kiev, Marshal Semyon Budyonny commanded the Soviet Southwestern Front, nearly 700,000 men spread across the Dnieper River Valley. But they were in danger and didn't know it. To the north, German Army Group Center's panzers under Guderian were turning south. To the south, Kleist's Army Group South was pushing north, their goal to meet behind Kiev. A giant steel trap was closing. Stalin's generals saw the danger. Chief of Staff Zhukov warned him, "Comrade Stalin, the Kiev front must withdraw immediately, or it will be encircled." But Stalin refused. He was convinced the Germans were bluffing. Voice actor as Stalin, cold tone: "Kiev will be defended to the last man. Retreat is forbidden." The Soviet soldiers dug in and waited. On August 25, 1941, the German pincer began to close. Guderian's 2nd Panzer Group swung down from the north. Kleist's 1st Panzer Group drove up from the south. In between them, 500,000 Soviet troops. The distance between the two spearheads shrank every day: 200 kilometers, 150. By mid-September, only a narrow corridor remained open near Lochwitza. Visuals: muddy tanks, exhausted infantry, Luftwaffe bombers overhead. German bombers pounded every road and bridge. Soviet units tried to escape, but columns were shredded by air attacks. On September 16, 1941, the trap closed. Visuals: 2 arrows meet on a map. Red pocket forms around Kiev. Kiev and everything inside it was surrounded. Inside the Kiev pocket, chaos reigned. Soviet divisions fought without coordination, cut off from supply and command. German artillery rained shells on the trapped army. Air attacks tore through columns of retreating men. The Red Army tried to break out. Once, twice, 3 times, but the ring only tightened. Entire corps were annihilated. A German officer wrote, "Everywhere we found wrecked vehicles, burned tanks, and corpses. The stench of death covered the land." By September 26th, the battle was over. 665,000 Soviet soldiers were captured, the largest encirclement in military history. The Germans believed they had won a decisive victory. But behind the triumph was the first shadow of disaster. The Battle of Kiev was a triumph of tactics and a disaster of strategy. Hitler's decision to divert his panzers south delayed the advance on Moscow by 6 precious weeks. The soldiers who fought at Kiev would later face the snow outside the Soviet capital without fuel, without winter clothing, and without time. Even as the Germans celebrated, autumn arrived, the first rains fell, the ground began to turn to mud. And in the north, the Soviets were regrouping. The road to Moscow was now longer and colder. The fall of Kiev marked the greatest military encirclement ever achieved and the beginning of Germany's greatest illusion. Hitler declared victory. He believed the Soviet Union was finished. But in Moscow, Stalin replaced panic with purpose. He promoted Zhukov, mobilized reserves, and began preparing for a new defense line. For every man captured at Kiev, 10 more were being armed behind the Urals. The Blitzkrieg had reached its zenith. From now on, it would only slow, freeze, and finally break. The Battle of Kiev was the largest victory the Wehrmacht would ever know, and the last of its kind. Because after Kiev came Moscow, and there the hunter would become the hunted.